What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name is Kyle. It's Sunday evening, about 5 o'clock here for me. We're going to be continuing my 32-team projection series. We have two more divisions left, so I'm hoping to finish these up this week, and all of August we can just focus on awesome content, whether it's mock drafts, live streams, or stat videos where I'm just kind of going over information, training camp news and updates, things like that. So hoping to plow through it this week. We're going to be covering the Denver Broncos as we get into the AFC West. If you guys are unfamiliar with my program here, I will talk for the first few minutes talking about the 2023 review of the team, and then we'll move on to the 2024 projections. I have my projection document here on the screen now, and you guys can get access to all of my projections, my rankings, my bonus data and articles. That's all on the fantasyfellowship.com. You guys can check that out there. But let's get right into it, man. The 2023 Denver Broncos, they went 8-9. Which when I look back at that number, I thought it would have been a lot worse, but they were competitive. I guess that's the best thing and probably the nicest thing to say about the Broncos. They completely switched head coaches last year to Sean Payton. They got Joe Lombardi, a former disciple of Sean Payton's, and they gave the Russell Wilson season a try. It didn't end well. The numbers looked fine. They didn't throw for a lot of passing yards, though. They threw for about 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, though. So the touchdown percentage was pretty nice. They didn't throw the ball a lot, only 513 times, but they had a solid completion percentage up there in the upper 65%. The running game, not the greatest. 451 attempts, about 1,800 yards, about 4 yards per carry, only 8 rushing touchdowns, 5 total fumbles. So it was a pretty pedestrian running game. They like the volume, though, so maybe we can look for that number to improve going into 2024. But I thought the passing efficiency was fine, about 6.95 yards per attempt. Russell Wilson did play the majority of these games. They let him sit for the last 2 or 3 games, so you saw Jared Stidham kind of bring some of these numbers down. Actually, he brought the yards per attempt up. But Russell Wilson was okay. They didn't let him throw the ball a ton. He only had 447 pass attempts last year, but he was actually decent. 66% completion percentage, about 3,000 yards, just under 7 yards per attempt, though. 26 TDs, 8 interceptions, and he ran the ball well. 341 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns as a QB. Javonte Williams led the way on the ground. Not a great year for him. It was his first year back from the knee injury. 217 carries, though. That's promising for about 774 yards and only 3 rushing touchdowns. He struggled most of last year, 3.57 yards per carry. He was catching a lot of passes, 47 total catches, 58 targets, only 228 yards, though. That's under 5 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. He's still a good receiving back, but maybe that knee injury is taking him a little bit extra longer to heal. But he looks good this offseason. He lost a lot of weight, too, so I'm banking on Javonte Williams bouncing back in 2024. Jaleel McLaughlin was the surprise. He was used a lot as a receiver, had some nice opportunity running the ball, 410 yards, 5.39 yards per carry. Couple touchdowns through the air, 1 through the ground. He's not like a starter back, but he's definitely a change of pace back that I think will make his mark on the Broncos this year. And then Samaje Perine, he was a receiving back for them, a third down specialist, 50 catches, 53 rushing attempts. He didn't get a lot of work early, but he kept getting more work as the season went on. And he's a good passing down back, like 9 yards per catch on 50 catches. Like, Perine's a pretty solid pass protector and catcher, so we'll see him involved, I think, this year as well. The wide receiver position's a bit of a mess. We got Sutton, Judy, Mims, Brandon Johnson, Lil Jordan Humphrey. It was all Sutton, Judy. They ran a lot of 2 wide receiver stuff, and Mims was the most talented guy, I think, that they didn't get to get on the field, and he looked good in some small samples, but they primarily leaned on Sutton and Judy. Obviously, Jerry Judy's gone. Sutton with a team-high 10 touchdowns. The next closest was 4, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. And then the tight end was just a weird 5-man rotation. Adam Troutman had the most receptions and targets there. Greg Dulcich was injured for most of the year. It was just kind of a nothing spot for the Broncos at tight end. So it was a really rough first year here. They had nothing going for them momentum-wise pretty much at all season. They did get a little bit better down the stretch, but they were at least competitive, minus that one Dolphins game. The Broncos were a competitive team. And I think this is something to build off. You remove Russell Wilson, you're probably going to lose some efficiency at quarterback, going to a rookie quarterback. But I think the running game can improve, and I kind of like some of the receivers and the tight ends bubbling up here. So 2023 review, Broncos had to eat it. Sean Payton's first year. I think they're in a position now to grow. I mean, they haven't had a first-round pick in a while. And I think next year we'll see the best of the Broncos. But this year, they're going to be in that 8 to 10 win mark. And let's open it up here with the 2024 projections. Bo Nix, man, their first round pick. Again, it was their first round pick in a while. I think, was that the one they got from Seattle? I can't remember or how they were able to get that pick. But either way, the Broncos looking like they're going to use Bo Nix as their first starter week one here. I have him at 475 passing attempts, 66% completion, about 3,300 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He's actually improving upon Russell Wilson's yards per attempt, his passing yards, and he's right there, I think, in percentage. Bo Nix likes to dink and dunk a lot. He'll throw to the running backs, and that's one of the Sean Payton principles of offense is we take those checkdowns, we hit the tight ends, we get the pass out quickly. So I think Bo Nix can do that. I call it bumper bowling at quarterback, but overall, I think the Broncos not much more pass attempts than last year. I have them kind of at the same. I have 12 more passing attempts in 2024 than they did last year, but the big discrepancy is going to be the passing touchdowns. I expect those to come down. We'll talk about the rushing touchdowns in a bit, but Bo Nix can run a little bit. 35 rushing attempts, 145 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 fumble. I don't think for any format we're going to be super excited to have Bo Nix. I think in a super flex league, he's a fine QB3 option for you, but we're not starting Bo Nix in any format really, unless he comes in and starts balling and he's a super flex QB2. But I have him down here at QB29. I think he's going to start most of the year, and I think he's going to be okay. I think he can play like a Derek Carr type offense where he's kind of just an efficient game manager. That's really all they need him to be. And then Jarrett Stidham should compete for the number 2 duties. Maybe Zach Wilson sneaks in there, but there should be, I always give a couple games to the backup. So we'll give Stidham two games there. But quarterback wise, I want to see some nice things from Bo Nix. We're going to see some highs and lows from this Broncos offense. It's going to be inconsistent passing the ball. But if he's hitting his checkdowns and if he's getting the ball out quickly, not getting sacked, I think the Broncos could have themselves something here. Let's move on to the running back, which is, to me, the most exciting position on the Broncos because last year they had the most pass attempts to the running back position, and Sean Payton's always, going back to Drew Brees in the Saints days, he has always targeted his running backs heavily and made them the centerpiece of his offense. So you got Javonte, you got Jaleel, Audric Estime, who they drafted, and Samaje Perine. They also have Blake Watson there, who I don't have projected to make the team, but they have 5 decent guys here that they like. And I do see Javonte Williams leading the team. And I only have him at 220 attempts. That's only 3 more than last year. So I feel like that number could be greater because if he looks good, like they have to continue to give him the ball. But I have his yards per carry jumping up significantly from last year. So 965 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 47 catches, which is exactly what he had last year, 60 targets, 315 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. So kind of the same volume that I'm seeing from last year, but I'm expecting his efficiency to go up quite a bit as he's a full year removed from that injury. And he's also, the beat has been lately that he's dropped a lot of weight. He's back at his college playing weight, which could be a huge, you see a lot of running backs lose weight and some good things happen to them. Receivers were usually trying to bulk up at receiver position, but running backs, when they drop weight in their second or third season, it's sometimes a really good thing. So I'm interested in Javonte Williams. The backup there, it's going to be a committee. We know that. Sean Payton's always used 2 or 3 backs. You think about Alvin Kamara with Mark Ingram or Darren Sproles or Pierre Thomas days. Like there's always 2 or 3 guys in the mix. So we're going to see Jaleel McLaughlin kind of get the number 2 duties. I think he's, a guy that gets a few carries per game, but he's going to be involved as a receiver. If he improves upon pass blocking, which he's small, he needs to get better at that. He could be on the field more. I just have him as a rotational guy, though, 65 carries, 325 yards, and a rushing touchdown. And then I got him, doing some receiving work here, 35 catches, 45 targets, 245 yards and a touchdown there. I'm actually excited about Audric Estime quite a bit because he's going really late in drafts right now. He's kind of free. I view him as like a Latavius Murray type runner. And Sean Payton's always had a big back to do some of the dirty work. And I think we might see Audric Estime be that guy this year. So 95 carries, 405 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and then a little bit of receiving work from Estime. That's not his, it's not what he's known for. He's more of a grinder. But when he hits open field, man, he's tough to catch up. He's, some of his runs, he looks like he's Leonard Fournette just galloping through the secondary. So I like Estime. Keep an eye on him. And then I wrote it as Samaje Perine here. I had been going back and forth. Is it Blake Watson? Is it Samaje Perine? I think Samaje makes the team just because he's such a good pass protector and good receiver. I have him as the 4th running back, though. And So many questions here. They have 4 good guys. I don't know how they're going to use them all. I have Perine getting a little bit of work, significantly less work than he did last year, though, which would hurt his fantasy value. So he's kind of a guy that's just not rosterable at the moment right now. But if they decide to move on from somebody, maybe they trade Perine, maybe they move on from Perine and cut him. I don't know. There could be a lot of things that open up opportunities for the Broncos backs, but for now, I mean, I got Javonte Williams as my RB16. And like I said, I feel like those numbers could be too low. I basically gave him the same exact numbers last year and just it spiked his efficiency up as he's a full year removed from that knee injury. And he could be a low end RB1. I think he's a fun RB2 with some upside. If you can get him as your RB3, that's where it looks really good. And then we have to go down farther on the list to find the backups here. I got McLaughlin at RB48. I got Estime at 54, and Perine will be lower. But on the last spot of your bench, though, you could grab Jaleel or Audric Estime and see what happens. If Javonte gets hurt, that's going to really open things up for this backfield. So I'm very excited about it. Between the top 4 running backs, I have 135 targets. Last year, the top 3 running backs had 150. So I'm a little light there. I could add more targets to the RBs. But I don't know. I want to be invested in the Broncos backfield, and I think Javonte Williams is an interesting ticket. But that's enough of the running backs. Let's go on to the wide receiver position. Overall, I'm not finding myself wanting to draft Broncos receivers. I think Cortland Sutton's interesting, but now I think it's a downgrade to Bo Nix. Russell Wilson, did have a nice rapport and chemistry with Cortland Sutton, especially near the red zone. So I have his touchdowns coming down dramatically. I still have Sutton being the lead receiver on this team, but Bo Nix is more of a short A-dot kind of guy. Cortland Sutton lives more so on the boundaries and down the field and things like that. So I think Sutton might struggle with Bo Nix. Marvin Mims, the number 2 receiver, I'm excited about him. I'm hoping he's going to be their starting slot receiver this year. Otherwise, maybe Troy Franklin can push him for that slot snaps. So it's Sutton, and then we still don't really know the pecking order, whether it's Mims, Reynolds, or Franklin. Tim Patrick's also there too. So there's going to be a lot of rotating, I think, with these guys. But I want to believe Sean Payton wants to give Marvin Mims the ball. I have Mims as the number 2 receiver in this offense, getting some carries. He's going to get some punt return and kick return opportunities with the new rules this year. So if I take any Broncos receiver, it's usually Marvin Mims with one of my last picks. But I do have Sutton, 65 catches, about 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. I got Mims at about 53 catches, 775 and 4 TDs. Josh Reynolds will compete with Troy Franklin, Tim Patrick to be the number 3 receiver. It's kind of a mess. I do want to see how this shakes out in training camp, but I have given it slight edge to Josh Reynolds. I think Troy Franklin maybe can compete for that down the stretch. And then Tim Patrick, man, we just can't trust him to stay healthy. So it's kind of a mess at receiver, honestly. And from where we're drafting these guys, I mean, I got Sutton. I don't have Sutton very high at all. I have Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 49. So I'm not interested in the Broncos wide receiver game. I think if I'm taking a shot on anyone, it's Marvin Mims to have a year 2 breakout. Otherwise, you can maybe try Troy Franklin. I just think I'm more excited about Marvin Mims than any other receivers here. And then that's just with the last pick of my draft. But I don't really want to rush my wide receiver analysis here, but I just don't think I'm very interested in it. You could take Sutton as kind of like a late wide receiver 3 flex type player. I would rather some guys with some more upsides. I don't know if Sutton's going to be able to get to where he needs to be for me to be excited about it. So we'll finish up with the tight ends here as well. Overly not excited about the tight end position, but it does look like Greg Dulcich is healthy and he's running and doing a lot of motion and things with the ones. I have him as the lead tight end this year. Adam Troutman, number 2, Lucas Kroll, number 3. Troutman was the leading tight end last year, but I think a healthy Dulcich, a big play tight end down the seams, 26 receptions, 40 targets, 285 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Maybe he develops as the number 3 receiving target in this offense. I think I'm really struggling here. And it's always tough, like when you get a team with either if it's a new coach or new offensive coordinator or they go to a rookie quarterback, and I just don't know how it's going to look. And honestly, like this tight end depth chart has been in flux for them the last handful of years. They haven't had a starting tight end really since Julius. What's his first name? You guys know what I'm talking about. Julius Thomas. So my money's on Dulcich. I'm not really drafting Dulcich in a redraft league. You can take shots on a best ball, still hold on to him in dynasty. But overall, I have Dulcich down here at like tight end Let me hit update on these numbers. I got Dulcich at tight end 33. So just just a player to monitor in training camp. And really, we have to watch. Like Denver's preseason games are going to be one that I want to watch. As far as now getting into my final thoughts here, I am probably the most unsure on the Broncos of any team in the NFL this year. I just don't know how it's going to look. I think they're going to be an interesting team to watch and grow this year. But with Bo Nix, we don't really know what we're going to get. I think it's going to be a lot of short stuff. And I think my money's on Javonte Williams being the best pick from the Broncos this year. So maybe 6-7 wins from the Broncos this year. I actually think they're going to regress a little bit from last year. But if they can, maybe they can trade Cortland Sutton and get some draft capital. I think they're still one draft class away from being where they want to be. And just with the NFC or AFC West, I think the Chargers can beat the Broncos. I think the Raiders could beat the Broncos, and we know the Chiefs will do so. So they're fighting for the bottom of the AFC West. But I'm willing to be surprised if Bo Nix comes in and he's just really efficient and takes care of the football, doesn't get hit, gets the ball out quick. Could be a nice year. So let me know what you guys think. I'm really struggling with the Broncos. I want to know what you guys think in the comments. I want to thank you for your patience. Thank you for hanging out with me in this video, and we'll continue popping out the AFC West. Thanks. Peace.